This podcast is brought to you by People's Food Co-op, a community-owned grocery store in downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin and Rochester, Minnesota, that promotes local farmers and producers through an emphasis on fresh, healthy, sustainable food. Anyone can shop. Everyone is welcome. For more information, visit them online at pfc.coop. This podcast is also brought to you by Trempealeau County Tourism. Whether your idea of fun is bicycling, hiking, or canoeing, afterwards head into the heart of one of their welcoming communities to experience historic architecture, independent shops, and locally owned dining establishments. Visit Trempealeau County Tourism online. We talked with artist Tyler Voorhees about influences, his process for creating new work, murals, hidden messages in his paintings, the Lamplighter exhibit, and what's next. Check out his work at Artspire's Art Fair and Sale, Saturday, June 11th. You can find more conversations, food reviews, live music, and events on our website, lacrosselocal.com. I'm Amy.
And I'm Brent.
And this is La Crosse Local.
My name's Tyler Voorhees. I was born in Tulare, South Dakota, population 248. What led me to art? Gosh, I've always drawn. I remember as a little kid, like first memories of making art was to like try to copy what I saw in the coloring books. I remember trying to draw it and I could get pretty close, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And of course, encouragement from the parents always helps. Like, wow, look at what you did. I remember making art from a young age and always loving to draw, and I still love to draw. Eventually that led into like drawing caricatures, like those big head guys with the little bodies. I remember seeing those and thought that was really a cool way to draw somebody. And so I started making those of like all my family members and all my friends. And that also started me on this path of like playing with proportions of people and, making certain things bigger and smaller and how that changes how you perceive the figure, even though I would have never described it that way. Like looking back, I can see that evolution. And then, in high school, I didn't, I made a lot of art on the side, but we didn't have an art class. I had no art classes in high school because I was in such a small town, but continued to just like draw and play around with things. And I remember finding like Salvador Dali and some of the surrealists. That really led me to see the different proportionality as being like a fine art, kind of a fine art packaging with it, like a really beautiful finished painting that features that disproportionate figure. And then Tim Burton and a sculptor named Giacometti, these are kind of my biggest influences as far as the style that I'm reaching towards. And then, I went to college, started in other paths because I was never told you could be an artist and eat. Was just unhappy in architecture and in, the sciences. I was interested, but I just wasn't excited. And so I came back to art and got an art degree and kept it on the side. And then eventually it became my full-time gig. And so that's what I do for a living now. And I can't believe it most days.
You kind of mentioned it there with Tim Burton. Like I instantly, when I saw your work, which I'm relatively new the last couple of weeks when you reached out, I thought of instantly like American Gothic painting / Tim Burton. Your work is very unique in some sense, like you just referencing there. Is there any other inspirations you use, like music or anything like that? Or is there anything that...
I mean, I listen to a lot of music while I make art. And I think that definitely feeds into the energy that I bring to it. Like most creatives, I get doubtful about what I'm doing, or it takes some courage, to like go for it. And music helps give me that courage, I've found, especially with like something big like a mural. I put on some rock and roll and, like old Nirvana is kind of my thing right now, or some bold hip hop or something, just to get my energy going. I don't know about visually that music inspires it. It's just more like the energy behind it. But I'm also really like, I take a lot of inspiration from obviously history. If you look at my work, you see it's all about the history of the worker and about telling the stories of workers of the past. It's the style and the history combined to make something new. So history is like a huge influence, and I get that influence by reading about history, by looking through a lot of old photographs. Some of my favorite photographers, like in the early 1900s, that went around and photographed everyday people. Like I just treasure those collections and definitely draw inspiration from them. you mentioned American Gothic, that painting. Have you seen the painting I did of that? Like the version I did?
No, I didn't know. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. I'll see if I have one here, or I'll send you a picture later. But so for the people listening that aren't familiar with my work, I do these really elongated characters that depict old jobs. I call them the jobs of yesteryear. And so with American Gothic, I love that. I just love that simple, humble portrait of that painting by Grant Wood, but I wanted to change it and do something new with it. So I did a version called the Haymakers. I made mine a husband and wife. I know his looks like a husband and wife, but it's a father and daughter if you look at the history of it. But I made mine a husband and wife standing there with their old scythe and a pitchfork and kind of their old tools of the trade of putting up hay, and standing in front of this giant like field of bales, of round bales that kind of go into the distance behind them. To me, history feeds the work. Like me learning and researching history is how I kind of take it in, and then I breathe it out in the studio when I'm making the work.
Looking at your work, it does kind of seem to follow like a storyline through most of your work here. It sounds like you dive into a lot of sort of detail into it in terms of just research. Is the process fast when you're coming up with ideas, or is it kind of slow and steady, or how do you work?
I travel a lot and I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of the ideas come from those interactions, which is part of why I love the whole art festival circuit that we do. Is it allows me to connect with people around this theme and just hear their stories. Oh, my grandfather was a mailman and told me about delivering snow in the 10-foot blizzard. Things like that will often just give me visual cues that might make their way into a painting at some point. And, to keep track of those, I keep a running list in my studio here just of all the jobs that are on my docket or things I think of. When I think of it, I'll just jot it down. And then when it's time to make art, like right now, I'm in a 2-week period before my next show where I'm just going to make as many paintings as I can. I just look at that list, which stories grab me. And once I find, which 1, 2 to 3 I'm going to do in that little batch, start researching and start reading as much as I can find online. If I haven't done it before, look up what I can find on the history of it. And then as I learn about it, then the idea starts to form, and, I'll make little sketches about it and then start on the actual painting. I think sounds like a really long, drawn out process, but I'm pretty decisive about it at this point. I've got the look down. I've got my composition sense is getting more decisive. I can do them pretty quickly, relatively speaking, but I don't know, what's quick. Each artist works at his own pace. And one thing I didn't mention is that in every painting, as part of the story behind that job, I put something in there that shows how that job changed over time. So like with that Haymakers piece that I told you about, the couple standing there with the old farm implements, the old farm tools, the round bale behind them actually shows the evolution of farming, because you would never make a round bale with those old tools. You would use a baler and a tractor. Oh. So it's often hidden like that. It's subtle, but each painting I do in the jobs of yesteryear will have that little bit of the evolution of that job or industry hidden in there.
That's pretty exciting. I'm actually, while you're talking to me, I'm kind of digging through your different work. You got a shop page, you also have murals, which we could touch on too. I guess, I also pulled up the one with the hay bales, the American Gothic sort of one. It's really interesting for people that want to come check you out. Art fair and sale at Artspire, Saturday, June 11th. What can people expect? I've already gone to your shop page and I see quite a few prints that I'm already thinking about getting here. But what can people expect when they come to your booth?
I'll have a mix of both original paintings and prints or reproductions of the original paintings. A lot of my paintings are very tall. Like my figures are really tall, and so I paint on wood panels. I have my brother actually makes these, 2 foot by 6 inch tall wood panels that I often paint on. In fact, that's what I'm working on right now. I've got a couple in the works. I've got a deep sea diver and a plague doctor, which has been a really popular one recently. Yeah, what you can really appreciate in person with the originals is that the background is painted on a wood panel. Yeah, and so then after I paint the background, then I make the figure out of paper. And so you see all these little torn bits of paper. So I'll trim all this off the edges and then paint on the front of it to finish out the details of the figure. And then I affix that to the wood panel. So the originals, what's really nice about them is they have this really beautiful little subtle dimension to the figures, to the workers in the paintings. And so they stand out just that little bit more, and you're just drawn to them. And then, of course, the reproductions are like a flat reproduction of that, so they don't have the same dimension, but they still look good.
You also do murals.
Mm-hmm.
So is that something that's relatively new for you, or how does that even work really?
Yeah, that's what I started. I was like, how does this even work? I just want to make a big painting. How do I do this?
Because it definitely looks
really
different, I mean, similarities, that sort of stuff, but it looks like almost a little bit more modern.
Yeah, well, my wife and I, and she's a big part of the business. I haven't even mentioned her. She's like the business side of it, the visionary. She's also a graphic designer, so she has the kind of visual acumen and skills to make great compositions and great choices in that way. So on the murals, we work together more than just on my regular work. What we found is, with public art, we've kind of gone more into like a more vibrant look with the murals. There's a little bit more color. There's a little bit more playfulness with it. And it's really fun. I mean, just the physical nature of it, painting on that scale is just a blast to me. I just love like this huge wall, big, bold statement. And it's fun to just kind of conquer it in a way and put a big piece of art on there and figure out how to do that. As far as the technical aspect of it, I'm sketching it in my sketchbook to scale, and then either trying to project it if I can with a projector, or if that's not possible, then I'll grid it out more or less. Just step back a lot because it's so easy to get tripped up with the dimensions of it when you're up close. Most muralists use a grid system or the projection method to keep your proportions right at that scale. We take this whole theme about workers and celebrate them with murals, either workers that are more, native to that area, that have a local history or that represent something in some way. So we did one in Mexico, was one of the most recent ones. And we did a lamplighter, which was a person, who went around and lit those street lamps as day faded to night to keep the streets lit and safe. The lady who had us come down to do that, she had a history being a literal lamplighter in that town. She paid the local government to light the streets because she owned a restaurant, and the workers of her restaurant would walk home in darkness in these dark streets. So she paid to have these lights replaced and literally like lit the streets. So this lamplighter had a special meaning to her. And so we painted a lamplighter in Acumal, Mexico. I love doing it. I love the public aspect of it. It's just art for everybody, and it makes a public area more beautiful, and it brings the community together. And I just love like the power of public art.
Is there anything coming down the line for you that's exciting next couple of a year or two?
Yeah, we've always got our eye on the horizon and talk big picture stuff. We've got a few possibilities there. The murals are always an exciting opportunity because we love to travel. We have 2 young boys that are 5 and 9, and they come with us, and they've started to kind of help with the murals a little bit. We don't have anything like nailed down just yet with murals, but there's always opportunities coming up, and there's some irons in the fire there. And then, during the pandemic, we did a giant sculpture of a lamplighter. Had a lot of fun doing that, and we welded together all these tools to create this 13-foot tall sculpture of a lamplighter. We had some challenges with it because it was a whole new thing to us, and took us a while to figure it out. And we're still figuring it out because we're trying to make it interactive where people help illuminate the light on the sculpture. But we just really love the sculpture aspect of it. And so another possibility is moving more into that and kind of bringing that more into like smaller scale work that could go in people's homes, or perhaps getting more public art contracts to do more sculptural work as well. There's new directions in painting that I'm exploring. And so there's always new things to try. And I try to be the type of artist that doesn't get too comfortable, that's always expanding and always learning and trying new things. Every painting is an opportunity to grow in that way.
Just looking at your work, to me, it kind of spans so many genres in terms of, I guess kind of not older, but, just kind of older sort of ways people work, using the history component and also the contemporary component. I know I'm going to stop down at ArtSpire and buy something at least. If people want to find out more, or maybe, they just want to check out your shop, what's the best avenue for them to go to?
Yeah, I think the website, tylervoorheesart.com, is going to give you like the biggest breadth of my work. Voorhees is 2 O's, 2 E's. But yeah, if you just Google Tyler Voorhees Art, should get you there. And then the Lamplighter sculpture is actually on its own page. It's called the lamplighterart.com, and you can see the sculpture and the mural I talked about in Mexico. Those would probably be the best ways to keep up with it. Social media, we've been drawing down a little bit with Facebook and Instagram, so you won't see a lot of new posts for us there, but we've been putting more effort into Patreon, which is a creative social media network full of just creatives. And you can find us on there at patreon.com/Voorhees Art Collective, because it includes my wife. She writes on there, and me. And then as the boys get older, they'll have a place to put their work as well. Yeah, we're on there a lot. And in fact, that's how we found ArtSpire, believe it or not. A band that we love and have followed for years called Cloud Cult is coming to ArtSpire, and we are one of their patrons on Patreon. And so we keep in touch with what they're doing and see where they're going. And we couldn't believe they're coming like to this awesome little festival in La Crosse, Wisconsin, which isn't too far from us. And so we were on board at that point. Yeah, we're excited to see them on Friday.
La Crosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you'd like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at La Crosse Local. Find out more about us at lacrosselocal.com, and you can subscribe to the La Crosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We appreciate it.